Good afternoon, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to review Ringo's new album, which is called What's My Name? It's another very familiar image of Ringo on the cover. I think he hasn't really varied the cover picture really for the last 5 or 6 albums, and to be honest, musically speaking, since Vertical Man, I haven't really heard too much variation in Ringo's albums, although there are some strong tracks on quite a few of them, particularly on Why Not. This album, well, I'll come to it, but it's on the whole it's a little bit disappointing, but there is one highlight worth the admission price alone. Just before I review the albums, picked up a couple of singles in Reckless Records in Berwick Street, picture sleeve of Ding Dong Ding Dong, so I listened to it to see if there was any difference between the album version, and there wasn't, nor on the B-side. Sorry, well, the B-side wasn't on the album. But I was listening to the chorus at the end, Ding Dong Ding Dong, and I'm trying to work out what George is singing, because at the end he's singing Ding Dong Ding Dong, something horseman, or something like that. And if any of you know what he's singing at the end, Ding Horseman, I don't know, it's definitely not Ding Dong Ding Dong. That's very perplexing. And I also picked up this superb picture single of Hey Baby, which I'd never owned, and I was very happy to have that. So that was from the same shop. And then I picked up the Ringo album in Fop, which is about the only record shop selling new vinyl in the whole of London. Well, there's a few in Sister Ray and Reckless Records, but they're mainly second-hand shops. So Fop is about the only, it's on Shaftesbury Avenue. H&V's closed down, both in central London and in Kingston and in Wimbledon. So only one choice of record shop to go to. So I got the album home. And first of all, I played it on Spotify last week in the car, and it was funny. I played it once the whole way through, and then as Spotify does sometimes, it comes up with a random track depending on what music you've been listening to. And it played Devil Woman from the Ringo album, and I was struck by what a great song that is compared to this album, unfortunately. And I think most people would agree that Ringo went through his peak solo-wise. Some people don't even think he had a peak, but I would maintain he went through his peak solo-wise in the 70s. And With Time Takes Time in 92 in particular. And that these albums are there's little too much self-written Richard Starkey numbers writing songs with someone else, and there's nothing very original about those. I think it'd be better if he just did cover versions, and unfortunately the cover versions he's chosen on, for example on this album, he's chosen to do a version of Money, which it's got a lot of auto-tune vocals on it, and it's a pretty distraught experience to listen to it, to be honest with you, not enjoyable at all. And on previous albums, he's reworked some of his old songs like Step Lightly and Wings. Again, and Love Me Do, he reworked pointlessly on Vertical Man. That was the beginning of the end as far as his cover versions were concerned for me. Whereas on Goodnight Vienna, I think he'd chosen some great songs to cover, like Alan Toussaint's A Cappella, Roger Miller's Husbands and Wives, and the 50s song Only You. So 3 great choices of cover on Goodnight Vienna. And the same on the Rotogravure album. I think his choices covers on there with Hey Baby and Carl Grossman writing A Dose of Rock and Roll was solid. So anyway, Joe Walsh is on the album. I'll show you the inner sleeve. Quite a nice picture of Ringo with the red moon, but again, the peace and love sign ever present. Nothing wrong with it, but it's getting a little bit samey. Quite a nice inner sleeve. And I didn't even bother to pick up this album on CD. Get the vinyl for completeness sake. I've got all of Ringo's albums on vinyl, bar Liverpool 8, Ringo Rama and Choose Love, which are not available anymore. If they are, they're bloody expensive. So okay, just to say, before I come to the highlight of this album, which really is a genuine highlight, the rest of it is kind of leaves me cold. There's got to get up to get down, which is a duet with Joe Walsh, where he's slagging off people on Twitter, Facebook, and the internet, and it's all a bit pointless, really. I mean, I can get the point. People do spend too much time on the internet, but you really need to write a song about it. It's Not Love That You Want is probably my second favourite on the album. It's got a good guitar sound to it, and I guess it's, let me see who's playing guitar. Dave Stewart playing great guitar on here, rhythm guitar, and the solo I think as well, and good tune. It's not love that you want, it's love that you need. Give Me Love. Catchy tune, yep, nice song, and reminded me a bit of They Don't Know a Thing About Love from Time Takes Time, and I'll come back to Grow Old With Me. Magic is my son's favourite track on the album, apart from Grow Old With Me, and it's decent, but it didn't do anything special for me. It's nice guitar solo though, and quite a nice hook to it. Money, as I said, is pretty disastrous cover. I mean, not terrible, but just pointless. Actually, it wasn't one of my favourite songs by the Beatles either, written by Barrett Strong, 1962. Then side 2 opens with Better Days, which is anonymous. I can't even remember much about it, to be honest. Then we have a fairly embarrassing song called Life Is Good, which has got quite a catchy melody, but lyrics to make you cringe. And Ringo was asked recently why he doesn't do an autobiography, and his response was, well, the songs are on the album. A song like Thank God for Music is me writing my autobiography. If that's the case, Life Is Good and Thank God for Music, they're just banal songs, and I can get the spirit or the message behind it, but they're really a long way from Ringo's peak, solo-wise. Spend Love, Spread Peace is quite a catchy tune and quite well played, and stands up a little better alongst its songmates on side 2. And the album finishes with What's My Name? Ringo, which is just plain embarrassing, and he does it in concert. You can get away with it if you're in concert and he shouts to the audience, "What's my name, Ringo?" But on an album it sounds just embarrassing, I'm afraid. But anyway, there's one reason to get this album, and that is a really moving cover of the John Lennon song Grow Old With Me, which he demoed on a piano in the home studio at home in 1980. Didn't take it into the studio with the Double Fantasy Band. Was going to do so for Milk and Honey. We all know why that didn't happen. It turned up on Milk and Honey, the album, as an unfinished demo. Then the Beatles considered doing it for the anthology, and they didn't get around to it. George Martin did a string arrangement for the Lennon anthology, and then Jack Douglas said to Ringo, "Have you heard the Bermuda tapes where John's talking to Ringo?" And even suggesting that this song might be good for Ringo, although I thought John was going to give Nobody Told Me to Ringo, not this one. It would have been a bit strange if he'd given this one to Ringo, because I thought this is a straight love song to Yoko. But anyway, it suits Ringo's voice like a glove. He does a really dreamy vocal. It's very moving, and Paul McCartney is on bass, doing a very tasteful bass part, and actually putting a bit more interest into the bass part, in my opinion, versus what he'd done on Free as a Bird and Real Love, which I thought I thought he played a bit safe, maybe because he didn't want to piss off George Harrison. But on here, there's lovely little touches on the bass, and Joe Walsh is playing guitar. Jack Douglas is doing the string arrangement. So if you think John wrote the song, Jack Douglas string arrangement, who produced Double Fantasy, Ringo singing, Paul on bass. These moments don't come along very often when you have 3 Beatles effectively contributing to a song on an album. And I'd been waiting for either Paul or Ringo to do a version of this, because it's such an obvious song, unfinished by John, which was crying out to be covered, and I haven't heard many people try to do that. So maybe it's they feel a bit sensitive towards the subject matter or something. But anyway, Ringo, good choice. It's one of your best ever choice of covers, and it sits nicely alongside your other Lennon covers, Goodnight Vienna, Cooking, and I'm the Greatest. So that song virtually redeems the rest of the album for me. As I say, the rest of the album is nothing special. It's not terrible. It's just not that kind of album you're going to go back to that often. But a couple of good songs and one superb cover. Thanks for watching. See you next time.